Your dreams are bigger, bolder, and more badass than the life you're living now, but something just keeps getting in the way. Join certified coach and former therapist Diann for the Driven Woman podcast. She'll show you how to get rid of whatever is holding you back so you can stop spinning your wheels and up-level your life. Get ready to hop in and buckle up. This is the Driven Woman podcast, and we're heading for the fast lane.
Hey, Driven Women. I am really eager to share my conversation with Jourdan with you today. Casey has a very interesting story about how she became an entrepreneur. She wanted to be a cop, went into the military to fund her college experience, got blown up in Iraq, came back with PTSD and brain damage that nobody even noticed for several years. It didn't stop her from getting a master's degree. It didn't stop her from counseling vets. But what it did show her was the 9-to-5, especially doing that kind of work, just not going to be sustainable for her. What also was not going to work for her was what she calls toxic entrepreneurship. What's that? You know, it's all over the internet and has been for years. Mostly dudes, mostly white dudes, posing in front of the rented mansion, the private jet, the Lamborghini with the perfect girl standing next to them, and urging you to enroll in their mastermind, their private coaching program, their VIP inner circle, where they will show you the secrets to 6 weeks to 6 figures. Many of us saw that and thought, oh, geez, is that what I've got to do to be an entrepreneur? I don't know. I'm not feeling it. Well, that's what Casey calls toxic entrepreneurship. And not only do we not have to do that, we don't have to do a 9-to-5 if that doesn't work for us anymore either. Casey is going to share with us a healthy, sustainable alternative, the kind of help that she offers to her coaching and consulting clients. So I'm really eager to share the conversation. You are going to learn a lot, and I think you're going to fall in love with Casey. But before I do, today's podcast praise is from Ashlee Braxton, who is a fellow life coach and host of the Happy Choice podcast, who says, "She's Wonder Woman. Diann just gets it. Her podcast always teaches you something and has you wanting more. Truly a Wonder Woman." Well, I don't think anybody's ever called me that before, but of course I love it. I'm blushing here. And for the rest of you, if I don't have your review yet, girl, what are you waiting for? There's a link in the show notes. It's almost too easy. Just do it. Okay, here's the interview. You're going to love it. Today, I am happy to welcome Casey Jourdan. Casey caught my attention when she led in our first connection with telling me how she was blown up in Iraq. And I thought, that got me curious. But she has so much more to offer than just that story. Casey has learned how to become an entrepreneur without driving herself crazy, without working around the clock, without chasing after every shiny new object. And she does so with the residual effects of brain damage acquired from that being blown up in Iraq experience. Some of the challenges that Casey lives with on a daily basis are similar to those of us with ADHD, the executive functioning challenges, and we'll get into some of that. But first, let me warmly welcome Casey Jourdan, and I'm going to tell you about her podcast a little bit later in the interview. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So another thing that caught my eye about Casey is that she's doing entrepreneurship her way. And this is not just because of the residual effects of the impact to her brain, as well as some PTSD, but because of her feelings about how entrepreneurship is being promoted on the internet in particular, something she calls toxic entrepreneurship. Will you tell us more about that? That's a fascinating term.
Absolutely. When I first started in online entrepreneurship, I kept running up against this wall where I felt like I was missing a giant piece of information. And through the years, I kind of started working around this information, and I realized there's so many tactics that are considered standard practice that are actually kind of gross when you really start to pull them apart and think about them. And like in the short history of the internet, the big voices came in, they took over, and they kind of created the standards. And I think it's time to change that because a lot of it's not healthy to the entrepreneur or our clients.
So what are we talking about specifically? I have some ideas like the bro marketing that some people are talking about, but what would you say specifically if somebody's completely unfamiliar with either the term bro marketing or toxic entrepreneurship? What are these women talking about? Can you give us some of the key variables or the key ways of knowing, oh, that's it?
Absolutely. So there's kind of four big categories that I see things fall under. There's a culture and mindset. This is things like toxic productivity, toxic positivity, the hustle culture that just like everything's upbeat and you got to work 24/7 to make it successful. There's a lack of actual teaching. So if you start really following these people, they keep dangling this carrot in front of your face of like, well, if you just pay me another $2,000, I'll tell you the secret to getting rich. Well, if you just pay me another $5,000, I'll let you into my inner circle and that'll make you rich. But they never actually teach you anything substantial, even if you give them the $2,000 and take the course. There's a whole thing of optics around kind of an obsession with money. Just because somebody makes 6 or 7 figures doesn't mean they're rich. They might actually still be broke. They might not be paying themselves even. The aesthetic, the rags to riches stories, overnight success, like all of these are just a facade in entrepreneurship. There's always a story behind all of those things that they're not telling because they just want the shiny objects, the shiny optics. And then like the last big category within the toxic entrepreneurship comes around sales tactics. This is that bro marketing where they're using psychological hacks they're basically taking advantage of how our brains are hardwired to either guilt us, shame us, or like trip us into buying from them.
Well, I'm just thinking as you're talking about this, Casey, some of the things that I remember when I first started paying attention to the way marketing was done online. When I first started shifting from having a psychotherapy practice where I worked with people face to face to pivoting into coaching, initially face to face and then eventually online. And first of all, the first thing I noticed was it was all dudes, mostly white dudes, mostly young white dudes who all look like they lived in Southern California. And I happen to know many of them do. And they would be posing in front of their Lamborghini or posing in front of their private jet or posing with their impossibly beautiful, perfect girlfriend, wife. And the things that I kept seeing over and over and over were 6 figures, 6K, 6 weeks to 6K, 6 months to 6K. And all of a sudden you just started noticing everybody saying, I just want to get to 6 figures. I just want to make 100K. I want to be in the 100K club. And it's like, why? I mean, if you actually ask people, why exactly do you need 100K? And well, I just know that's how much I want to make. But how do you know? And I think it's like, I don't think people really realize when somebody is playing a part and it's really convincing, they teach us what we're supposed to want. And then we think we want it. So we just get on that treadmill and just start following. And of course, there's the funnel, the ubiquitous funnel, which is start broad, leads you down small. You get deeper and deeper and deeper into their world. But I've been in a couple of those funnels, as I'm not proud to admit it, but I have spent not 6 figures, but 5 figures on people who got me hooked, reeled me in, and I was flopping around in their boat, gasping for air and wondering what the hell I was even doing there. I think this is what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And this is so like the funnel, like that kind of reminds me, like within the sales tactics, there's a lot of lack of consent. Like just because I buy a $12 thing from you doesn't mean I want to get 800 more emails from you. And you can get into I'm actually in a course right now where we're discussing the patriarchy and the racism and the political side of like where these tactics come from. And there's a reason the middle-aged white men are the ones you see at the face of a lot of this stuff.
I think a lot of my listeners would be very interested in that course. If you want to tell me about it later, I'll include it in the show notes. I know I personally would be. And I think women may be more affected by this showmanship than men, because I think women are culturally conditioned to believe we are less than. So we are often very susceptible to sales tactics that promise to show us the way. I've had many clients say, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm like, oh, that is so dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm ethical. I work with integrity. I'm not going to lead somebody the wrong way, but I do not want to take control of another being's life. And I think that willingness to sort of give up control and say, just tell me what to do, that's kind of scary.
Absolutely. And I think too, another thing that as women, we're so conditioned that, so there's a lot of research, they'll post a job opening and a man will look at it and be like, I've got one of 8 qualifications. Absolutely, I'll apply. I know I'm going to get it. And a woman will look at it. She's like, I have 8 of 8 qualifications, but I'm not really great at one of them, so I'm not going to apply. I think they play to that a lot. So if a man's making, I don't know, $90,000, he's going to round it up. And in his brain, he's making $100K and he's doing great, to kind of oversimplify, use that example. But if a woman's making $90,000, she's going to beat herself up because she hasn't hit this arbitrary threshold that's been put out there for us. And so it really makes us more susceptible to, that this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what we've set as the industry standard. Now we have to get there.
Well, and I think also in the coaching industry, if you will, it's still uncertified. I mean, there are people who there's all kinds of certifications out there, but you and I both know they're essentially made up and propagated on people who buy into the notion that, well, I don't feel qualified. So I think I need, it used to be people thought they needed a degree and they needed another degree, and that once they got that degree or that next degree or that higher degree, they would then feel confident. And there is absolutely no correlation whatsoever. There are people who have an abundance of confidence with no credentials at all. And then there are people who have multiple master's degrees, PhDs, who still feel insecure. I will link also to the article from Atlantic Magazine. I believe it's February 2018, called The Confidence Gap. I talk about it often because it is exactly what you're talking about, Casey, that a man will apply for a job when he meets half the criteria and feel that it's completely appropriate that he gets it. But a woman won't even apply unless she meets 100%. And even then she'll consider herself lucky if she gets an interview. There's something seriously wrong with that. And I know that women are not born insecure and believing they're inadequate. It is learned. But when we get sucked into this toxic entrepreneurship, we do not realize why it could be 5 years and $50,000 spent on courses and coaches and consultants and mentors and gurus and classes and thousands of hours reading blogs and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos. And they still feel like they're nowhere near 6 figures. Or some of them aren't even making any money at all. And I personally know of one woman who almost went bankrupt trying to become a coach.
Yeah.
And she's probably not the only one. So I want to talk a little bit about your background, because you didn't fall into entrepreneurship because you came back from the Middle East with brain damage. You were a mental health counselor working with vets and no stranger to the effects of trauma. Do you mind telling us why you decided to go into the military to begin with? Because it is an interesting choice.
Yeah. So my caveat is always that I enlisted pre 9/11. For those of us that are at age, we know that cultural political shift that happened with the terrorist attacks. I actually enlisted when I was 17, 3 months before those attacks. And I wanted to be a cop when I grew up, and I wanted to be National Guard so I could stay home and help with forest fires, which is what our National Guard did every summer. And they had just started a military police unit in my town. So it was this perfect way to build my resume, pay for college, start to work in law enforcement and get to know law enforcement, all while I was still, quote unquote, too young to be a cop. And then the towers got hit at the beginning of my senior year of high school. And because I was in high school, I was safe from any immediate deployment, but that instantly changed the entire face and function of our military.
That is for sure. But, a lot of my listeners, like me, identify with the traits of ADHD, whether they're officially diagnosed or not. And I happen to know that there's a lot of folks with ADHD in the military, in the police force, as first responders. Because of our dopamine deficiency, we're very much drawn towards excitement, adventure, and risk. Now, I know that you do not identify with ADHD, although you have some extended family who does. But what is it about wanting to be a police officer or wanting to be in the military that was so attractive to you?
I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but really it was a way to pay for college. It wasn't.
It's practical.
Yeah, no, the stocks that my parents had put aside for me crashed, and I lost my college fund about a year before I was supposed to, graduate high school. And my mom said I was going to college and I was going to figure out how to pay for it. And really the law enforcement draw was that my brother had struggled a lot. My older brother had struggled a lot with drug use and managing that. And I saw the toll that took on our family, and I wanted to be the fixer. And so if I went into law enforcement, maybe I could prevent other families from going through like what I went through. And so really my drive was, being able to help. And I was born and raised in the same town. And so I wanted to be a cop in that town and just make the world a better place.
I think that's a lovely thing. And do you feel that any less so as a result of the things that have happened in your life? Because your incident was in 2003, 2004. That was during your deployment?
2004.
So you were just a teenager then, and it was within months of you arriving in Iraq. You're no longer affiliated with the military.
Nope.
How do you feel about that decision? I mean,
about joining and the whole big picture of it?
Yeah, because the truth is, Casey, as we all know, we have our plans and then life interferes. Yep. So you had a really good, solid, practical plan. Like, I'm going to do this. It's going to pay for college. I'm one of the good ones. I want to be there for people, and I want to prevent other families from suffering the way my family did. That is all wonderful, beautiful. But you paid a very high price for following that path. And so something I'm always curious about is there are people who will come back with an injury like the one you had, and they pull the victim card off the card pile, and that's the card they will continue to play for the rest of their life, whether their injuries were serious or minimal. You are not that person. So I'm curious how you feel now about the choice to go there, what happened, the aftermath, and where it's led you since.
I wouldn't go back and change it. I can say that much clearly. It put me on the trajectory that I'm on. It made me who I am. It's brought me the opportunities I have. I've had a couple of times since coming home where parents have called me and said, "Hey, can you talk my kid out of joining the military?" And I said, no. I said, I won't do that. I said, I will have a very, very, very real conversation with them about the risks, especially about females in the military, the risks of sexual trauma. Like, I will lay it out for them. I'll also talk about like the amazing friendships I had. There was times where we had a lot of fun in the Middle East. Like if it was a country I felt I could safely visit again, I would probably go back. It's a fascinating culture. So I'll lay it all out as honestly as I can, but I won't ever tell somebody that it was a bad idea. And I didn't go into law enforcement. By the time I got home, I realized that that is not what I'm hardwired for. There was some years of struggle that I wish I could have seen better what was going on, but I think that's just the reality of PTSD. My brain injury also wasn't diagnosed for the first 5 years I was home. So so we were only working with the information of post-traumatic stress.
As though that's an insignificant thing.
Right. But what we didn't realize is there was some cognitive things. So I had to learn how to read again. I have visual spatial damage. So my brain translating font off the paper and turning that into language in my brain, that part got damaged. And I didn't realize why I was flunking out of college classes, because I didn't know that my brain wasn't doing what it was supposed to. And so, if I had had that diagnosis sooner and some more support from my unit, I think things could have gone smoother. But ultimately, it put me on the path of pursuing my master's degree, working in mental health, of connections there, helping tie me back to that passion of helping make life better for other people. Along that path, I can also connect all the dots of like how I met my husband. And there's no way I would have met him if I wasn't dumped down the road I got dumped down. And so I can see the whole spider web, and I don't know that I would change any piece of it because I'm at a point where I love what I do and I'm so proud of who I've become out of it.
I love that. And, I think the kind of person who would sign up for the military or police service for that matter, there has to be some comfort with risk-taking, uncertainty, being thrown into situations that in spite of all of the preparation and training you get, shit's going to happen that is unexpected and you're frankly not prepared for. So I think that desire and that willingness and that ability to just stop, drop, and roll is very much in the nature of every entrepreneur I know. Like, there are a lot of people who would say, you've got to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. For decades, our parents and our grandparents said, your goal in life is to get a good education, find a person that you can live with, find a good job at a good company, preferably with benefits and the magical term job security, and stay there. Now, the world of work has changed incredibly in the last few decades, but I don't think anyone is going to stay at one company for a career anymore. They're probably not going to stay in a single career. Your generation and beyond are going to have multiple careers. So the ability to do that stop, drop, and roll, I think really prepares you for entrepreneurship. But how did you actually end up in entrepreneurship and deciding to become a business strategist for new and emerging entrepreneurs?
I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Actually, my dad, of all the examples you just gave, my family has managed to do it all wrong. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom started her own business in her late 40s and went on to be nationally award-winning in what she does. My husband has been with his company 20 years, and so he is one of the anomalies in our generation who has found a career and stayed with a company. But for me, entrepreneurship was always something I saw and I knew was an option. And as I was working in mental health, I realized that I was not managing my trauma well enough to be helping others with their trauma. This was 7 years after I came home from Iraq, and especially doing counseling with veterans. And I was also doing crisis counseling with high school students. I was so trashed by the end of the day by helping work with them that I knew I couldn't sustain that. And so I was starting to look for other options. My husband and I were realizing the extent of the toll that the brain injury takes on my life. It's hard for me to maintain a quote unquote normal job, 40-hour-a-week job, because of how my health ebbs and flows. And I had discovered the fitness industry, and that's actually where I started. So I actually remember it was on our honeymoon, sitting in a bar in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And we were kind of talking about like, okay, we're married. What's next? And I said, well, I kind of think I want to quit my job and try running my own business. Now that you're stuck with me forever, I'm going to drop that one in your lap.
Surprise.
Yeah, exactly. And as he has so often done, he rolled with it. And we sat there and we kind of talked through numbers and like the job that I was in, which I was relatively new at. And we kind of laid out the plan. He's like, okay, I stay there for about 6 more months, play fair with them, pay off some bills, and then you can quit your job and we'll give this a go. And the idea was I would quit my job, start my business, and then we'd start trying for a family, and my company would already be established by the time we had kids, and I could be the work-at-home mom, and that didn't work out. We can go into that in a second. But from the fitness industry, I realized I didn't want to work in that industry full-time. And so I morphed. You get tired of writing meal plans. There's a lot of toxicness in the fitness industry. I mean, the diet culture, there's so many amazing books coming out about like intuitive eating and stuff like that. And that didn't exist 7-8 years ago.
It's a good point. And you know what's cracking me up, Casey, is like for somebody who does not have ADHD, you definitely veer towards all the environments that attract us. Like there's so many people with unidentified ADHD in the fitness industry because, and one of my previous guests, it was a client success story with my adorable client, Nora. She actually was self-medicating her ADHD symptoms through competitive weightlifting.
Yeah.
Because vigorous exercise, demanding exercise, intense exercise, competitive exercise really does create the discipline, the routine, the structure, the focus, all the things that help an ADHD brain operate at its best. So you may not be ADHD, but you are definitely an affiliate because you go to the places that we populate. It's so funny. But while you're there, you realize, you know what? I thought the military was for me. I realized it's not. I thought the police service career path was for me. I realized it wasn't. I'm going to try the fitness industry. Nope, that's not. And what I love about this is so many people feel like they have to pick and stick. They settle on something because their guidance counselor told them or their parents told them or it's what their friends are doing. And they feel they just have to make it work. In spite of the fact that there may be an abundance of evidence, it does not suit them at all. But they keep forcing themselves because they went to school for it, because they have all the student loans, because their parents were disappointed. You know what? Sometimes you just have to make a change. And you are a person who has allowed yourself to make a lot of changes. And each time you do, you just roll with it. Well, this didn't work out. That didn't work out. And, you just keep on going.
Well, and as I was going through this, I was trying to figure out, because then I start feeling bad, like I'm a flake, because culturally we're taught that you should pick a thing and stick with it. Here I have a master's in mental health. I know I'm a good therapist. I should be doing that. And I realized as I went through several more iterations on what I wanted to try to create as a home-based business, I realized the bigger story, the bigger root of it all is I love starting businesses. I love the initial 6 months to a year. There's a lot of excitement and energy and planning and chaos. And so my husband told me I wasn't allowed to.
Are you sure you don't have ADHD?
Maybe it's growing up too close proximity to my brother. I don't know, but
actually, you know what I think it really is, in all honesty, because you're too good a planner, Casey, to be a person with ADHD. Like you naturally plan.
Yes.
I think, honestly, there's a lot of crossover in the personality traits of those with ADHD and the personality traits of folks who are drawn into entrepreneurship. And by growing up with entrepreneurs as parents and seeing the ups and downs and seeing, well, it could go really well like it did with your mom, or it could go bust like it did with your dad. You had examples to follow. And I think that's very fortunate because most of us go into this without any context whatsoever, which means we have to unlearn all of the mindsets and the habits of being an employee. And that can take a long time.
That can be really hard. That's one I spend a lot of time with clients with. And so the reason I end up as a business strategist is my husband told me I wasn't allowed to start any more businesses. So I started a business helping people start businesses. And
aren't you clever?
And I won. And it's perfect. It's perfect.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about exactly what it is you do, because not everybody is familiar with the term business strategist. You're not a coach exactly. You're not a consultant exactly. And we both know that I think there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, especially as a woman. Many of us are facing ageism and sexism in the workplace. We get pushed out. We're not paid as well. There's all the reasons. But now, thanks to the internet, if you know anything at all and you enjoy sharing that knowledge with others, you have an opportunity to make something. It may be a side hustle or it may become an empire. but I think it's a wonderful time to be a female entrepreneur. And I would imagine a lot of your clients are probably women. So tell me exactly who you help, who are your favorite kind of clients, and how you help them.
Yeah. So I mostly work with women. I refer to them as early stage entrepreneurs. Some of them know they want or need to start their own thing, but they don't know what it is yet. Some of them have started and now are kind of banging their head against the desk because they're not sure what's next. It's a very overwhelming thing to dive into alone. Mm-hmm. And so I help them either how to package or how to monetize what it is they love. We figure out where their audience is, how to speak with their audience, how to get seen by their audience, and how to start getting paid. And so I only work one-on-one with my clients now so that I can meet them very specifically where they're at and go the pace. I have a client, one of my most recent clients, she wants to turn this into a full-time thing, but it's currently the side hustle. And so as we work together, I help create like action steps, like here's your to-do list for the week, but I'm always doing that with their feedback. And she said, I have a really crazy week at work this week. I'm like, cool, then you're going to do this one little thing. You're going to make this one little phone call, but it means you move forward this week. I talk to my clients a lot about baby steps and we talk about entrepreneurship and these big leaps and bounds and these big shiny things and all the stuff we're quote supposed to do, launch a course, build a membership site, whatever is baby steps. Like, let's not worry about that yet. Like, what can you do today to move you a little bit closer to whatever your goal is? That we were talking earlier about that 100K, that arbitrary number. One of the things we do is figure out how much money do you need to make? How much money do you want to make? Why you want to make that much? Like, I want a massage every week, so that costs this much. So I need to know I need to make this much to be able to afford that luxury in my life. Like, we'll break it down and then we can reverse plan from there. Like, what kind of client load does that look like? What kind of products are you going to make? Because I also run a product-based business. And so I'm doing more consulting that direction. And so like, how do we do it so it's right for you?
This sounds perfect for a lot of people I know. And honestly, Casey, it sounds like the opposite of toxic entrepreneurship.
That's what I'm shooting for. A lot of what I've learned and what I see as I put it through my lens of my brain injury and the PTSD, the anxiety, depression that come with that, like I said, I can't buy into the hustle culture. There are people who work 24/7 and they love that and they thrive on that. It's not me. And I can't work in an industry that says I have to do it that way. And so for me, there's also I try to be very honest about how I run my business to compensate for my health. And
can you say something specific about that? Like, I would imagine a lot of the people that are listening who think I have chronic fatigue, I have anxiety and depression, I have an autoimmune condition, I have whatever. It's one of the reasons why specifically an online business and self-employment as entrepreneurship is so perfect, because if you need to take a nap in the day, if you need to work late at night because you sleep till noon, you can build the business that fits your life and your limitations. So I would imagine that you're probably really skilled at helping people make the business that fits them instead of trying to fit themselves into this preordained hustle and grind box.
Absolutely. I try to come at every client with every tool I have. So like you said, that I'm an early bird. I'm not going to tell you have to have a 5 a.m. routine to be a good entrepreneur. That's BS. If you like to work starting at 11 p.m., we'll figure out how to put that in your schedule and how to make sure we still have time to connect. I don't work more than 20 hours a week is my goal. I have a giant sticky note actually on my computer or monitor reminding me to be intentional with my time during the day and only work a few hours a day. My entire quarter planning system is built around I work 6 weeks on, 1 week off, because I found that my body was kind of naturally doing that, where I do really good. I've got great energy. Things are flowing. They're jiving. And then I kind of crash and burn around 5 or 6 weeks and I just don't get out of bed for a week. And so then I used to negatively internalize that because I should work all the time. Hustle culture creeps in, even though I'm not working 24/7. And so actually just this year I've started trying this is I'm going to work 6 weeks. There's a couple things that week that I just couldn't rearrange, but no client calls, no podcast recording. That week is off. I get to play computer games and nap and watch Star Trek. And then I pick up and I already know what the first task is on that next week after the break week. So things like that.
That's beautiful. I'm sure there are plenty of people listening who are like, I want to do that. And the thing that's so interesting to me, and we all fall into this until we catch ourselves, is you don't need to create a business that feels like a job. You don't need to fit into any box. You make your own box or kick the box to the curb and have no box at all. There's no reason why you can't create the business that suits you. And I think you're never going to be feeling the toxicity otherwise, whether it's health, mental health, family, or just you like a lot of freedom.
Yeah. And that's the thing I like to work on with my client is kind of unraveling, what do you want this to look like? What do you want this to feel like? Even in context of branding.
Yeah.
You've been to my website. Like there's not a lot of words and a few of them are cuss words. Like that's me. All of my photos, I'm wearing a black t-shirt in front of graffiti painting in an alleyway. It took me a long time to realize that I don't have to wear a blazer when I get on calls with clients. I can wear a hoodie. When I'm on social media, I cuss a lot when I talk normally. So
that's why I wanted to.
Why am I censoring? Yeah, why am I censoring myself?
Clean,
right? I can still, there's this like unconscious professional switch in my brain after having been in the military and in law enforcement. But like I realized what I was portraying on my website didn't match who I was when I got on a call with the client. And it was very jarring.
A little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah. And so I went back and rebranded and said, who am I and what do I want? And that is where the rougher edge, the graffiti, I don't explain things with more words than I need to. I think my whole website has like 800 words on it. Like
it's very ADHD friendly. You absolutely need to check Casey Jourdan out. And before we go, I definitely want them to know about your podcast, Steady She Grows. It is delightful. It is absolutely perfect for the aspiring and emerging entrepreneur. It's raw. It's real. She uses all the same colorful words that I do. And I love the show art too, because it definitely highlights your badassery. So I am thrilled to have you here today and to introduce you to my listeners. All of the links to your website, your podcast, your socials, and everything else we've talked about today will be in the show notes. You got to follow this girl. She's got it going on. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, it's Diann. Can I be honest with you? At the beginning of each new year, I always told myself, this is the year I'm going to get my habits dialed in. This is the year I'm going to be crystal clear about my goals and I'm going to crush them. This is the year I'm going to get my shit together on every level and I'm going to do it all by myself. Been there, done that, got a whole stack of t-shirts. But it wasn't until I started working with my own coach that I realized what a difference it makes to have guidance, support, and accountability from someone who's not only like-minded, but like-brained. Yeah, I'm talking about another driven woman, entrepreneur, who also has ADHD and has got it going on. I have 2 openings in my signature one-on-one 12-week coaching program, and one of them might have your name on it. There's a link to a free consult with me in the show notes if you think this might be the year that you really get serious and go all in on an ADHD-friendly business and life. While you're thinking about that, have a listen to what one of my clients' success stories has to say about the difference it made to work with me.
So I remember when we talked about what you introduced as habit stacking, so pairing your habits, and when you did initially bring that up, my initial reaction was like, ugh, like that sounds awful. I don't want to do that. But that was like one of the first shifts that our work together had changed. And that is something that I'm grateful for every day. So the first thing I do in the morning is I go pee. And so what your advice was, take your medication, right after, have your glass of water there in the bathroom. And so that's sort of my daily routine. It's going to the bathroom, taking my medication, contacts, coffee. Yeah, and it's great because it just cuts out any chance of forgetting, which then would lead to kind of lollygagging around and then like, oh, wait, have I taken it? I should take it. Wait, but this one other thing. And so that really starts off the day so consistently and well. So that is the first thing. And then with regards to the rest of my morning routine, my best friend and I, we live together and we exercise in the morning now. So we've been doing that for the past 4 months, like at least 4 days a week. And so we do beach body, and it's just really fun because we do have the accountability of there's going to be someone waiting for you. So your butt better be up.
You've been listening to the Driven Woman podcast with Diann Wingert. Want more straight talk and strategy each week that will take you from spinning to winning? Don't forget to hit subscribe in your podcast player so you won't miss a single episode. Then head on over to the Driven Woman free and private Facebook group community. See you there.